The Hungarian Association of Executives presents Managers for Society, Future in Our Focus. Opening speeches. Please welcome on the stage István Kapitány, President of the Hungarian Association of Executives, Shell Global Executive. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Hello to all of you. I would also like to greet those who are joining us digitally. This is how our world works. Unlike last year, this year we have a hybrid program, and how nice is that? How nice is it that we can come together and talk about important issues? My name is István Kapitány. I am president of the Hungarian Association of Executives, and I'm the global executive vice president of Shell. And as such, I will talk about the fields of mobility and electromobility, which belong to the areas that I am in charge of. And I think I could share a couple of thoughts with you in this regard. When we started thinking about this conference, and as you can see, our topic is challenge of the present, the future of economy. At that time, when we started thinking about a conference, we didn't think that the challenge might become bigger, even bigger than it was. We see a change of habits, we change a shift in energy, and leading a company has never been an easy task. It's always been interesting, exciting. It provided a lot of opportunities, and I think together with the current war situation, with the war going on in Ukraine, the sum of these impacts are the fact that we can safely say that in a situation that is now coming close to a crisis situation, we have to think about and consider a lot of things. And we thought that it'd be a good idea to share the ideas, share the possible methods of managing companies in such a situation. Of course, crises always present the possibility as well. We can always see that after every crisis, societies have found the means and the ways of becoming even more efficient and running the societies in a more efficient manner. And I think company managers have a huge role to play in that. My task is huge. Our responsibility is huge because we have possibilities to shape the future, and we have possibilities that not many people share. And I think it is very important that we use these resources in a way that they not only deliver benefits for our shareholders, but for the entirety of society. I have been in this business of energy and mobility for over 35 years now, and there's one thing I've learned, and that is that the only ones paying for our decisions are the taxpayers, are the customers. Therefore, we have a huge role to play, because if something is not efficient and profitable in the long term, that will be difficult to run in the long term. So this is a very rational branch of society, and I think we have a huge responsibility. And I think at this moment, this is what we have to talk about, this responsibility, the challenge of the present. But we're not only talking about present management, but future management as well. I guess you've seen the titles of our panel discussions. These already indicate the topics that we would like to discuss today. Energy and sustainability. How can we reduce our exposure to gas and oil? How can we secure a more sustainable environment both in terms of economy and in terms of environment. And I would like to highlight that both of these aspects are very important. I am in a global position, so I attend a lot of international conferences, and very often I have the experience that we try to look at the world through one pair of glasses. If there's a conference in Houston, we think about the world only being in the US. If there's a conference in London, then we only consider London as the whole world. I live in London, in Mayfair, which is not the poor part of London. So if somebody thinks that that is the world, well, that person is very likely wrong. And we have to stand our grounds in Oman and on the other corner of the world, and we have to find solutions that can work in every corner of the world. And this is not just one single solution, this is several, it's a sum of solutions. How can we motivate people who work for us? How can we make sure that we are not bosses but motivators? How can we urge enthusiasm in our colleagues so that they can do their job with a high motivation? We have a daily contact to Ukraine and Russia, and in this regard, my most important task is to motivate them in this current situation. Obviously, you can imagine if there's a war somewhere, or if someone works in a country from where the war started, well, these are not easy tasks. And our job is not only to provide technical guidance, but as a leader, as a true leader, and to really motivate and inspire the colleagues. This is an inspiring leader, someone who is able to bring in new capabilities and to build on the existing capability. I think in the mobility panel we will have a very interesting discussion. I can already see that because of this current crisis situation, we're also speeding up, and we're speeding up very rapidly, and I think many of you are in the same situation. How can we change the situation faster? Our goal is decarbonization, and everybody talks a lot about this task. Some people are of the opinion that as of Monday we will have to shift to an entirely carbon-neutral world, which would of course be very nice, but it's not manageable. But then there are others who think, yeah, this is going to be a very slow process, why take part in it? And I think it's important to find mosaic solutions, find solutions that include and involve all layers of society, perhaps even those who are not yet in the position to drive electric vehicles, for example. And this is something I will talk about later on. We cannot wait any longer. The time for action has come. It's very clear, and I think the war has shown it very clearly, that there is no time to wait. And these are always occasions when I think about what I can do. Working for a large company, it would be easy to expect for the company to come up with something clever. But as I work for such a company, I know that this is not going to happen. Usually these innovative ideas do not come from the center. They usually come from the business level where there are customers. So I think everybody has to do something on their own fields. My area is mobility. I guess you've heard about the 46,000 Shell charging station. This is the smallest retail network. We have more units than Starbucks or McDonald's, and I'm very happy to say that our brand is stronger than Tesla, which might be surprising to many of you. But we have to shift from the fossil fuel network to a sustainable one, and we have to shift to an electric charging network. And what is our concrete goal? I'm not an analyzer, I am a leader, and the difference is that our job is not only to talk about these issues, but also to come up with an action plan that serve our goals. In my case, the objective is very, very clear. By 2030, we will try to increase the electric charging network to at least 50% of our activity, and to ensure that this comes from renewable energy sources. This means that we have to set goals which we can reach in the coming years, because otherwise our long-term goals will never come to. It's easy to talk about 2050, for example, but it's much harder to talk about 2022 or 2023. In our case, by 2025, we would like to have 500,000 electric charging stations. We currently have 90,000, which in 2009 was 0. So now we're at 90,000. By 2025, we would like to have 500,000. And by 2030, we would like to have 2.5 million. And for that, we have to earmark resources, and we have to target several countries. This is something I will talk about later on in more detail. Obviously, it's very important that we all think about the question, what are the examples that we can bring? Examples from which those present here today or following us online can learn. I would like to talk about electromobility a little longer. Obviously, this is an activity which we very much like at Shell, because our customers like it as well. I have been in this business for 35 years, and I've learned that if there's something that customers like, and if we are able to find ways to make it even more attractive to our customers, then there's a business opportunity to run that thing in a long-term, sustainable way. In 2021, 6.6 million electric cars were sold. In 2012, this number was only around 130,000. So electric vehicles have developed very quickly. In 2020, 10 million electric cars drove on the roads of the world, and 1 billion internal combustion engine cars. So this is approximately 1%. Of course, we could say this is just by accident. Why are we talking about it? But we're talking about it because by 2030, according to projections, and I know there are different projections and you see a lot of different estimates, but according to the International Energy Agency, there will be 220 million electric vehicles by 2030. So within 10 years, their number will increase from 1 million to 220 million, and I think everybody would like to take their share of this increase. And I think there is another scenario that could be even faster, which could also be more important in Hungary. And what we have to understand is that this development is not going to take place at the same time around the world. I am in charge of 80 countries. In Oslo, 70% of the cars sold is electric. In Karachi, this is not the case. But we have opened electric charging stations in Karachi and in Oman as well. For example, in Oman, we operate the electric charging network because they can charge Teslas, for example. There are a lot of good news in this field. So earlier on, the price of batteries was 1,200 kilowatts per hour. This was decreased to some 340 kilowatt per hour, dollars per kilowatt per hour. For example, we have an agreement with NIO. They manufacture supercars, and for example, their sales strategy is to sell the cars, but not the batteries. So the customers buy the vehicles without the battery. Of course, it's included in the car, but they don't pay for it. It's a service. And what we work on with NIO is to establish battery changing stations both in China and in Europe. And why is this interesting? Because it's an entirely different solution than the traditional quick charging. Why am I saying this? Well, because those who think now in 2022 that there is only one solution for the future, well, for those I can say that when I worked in Germany in 2010 and we established the hydrogen filling network with 100 filling stations in Germany, we planned for 1 million by 2020, but that didn't quite work out, so we ended up with 1,000. So if a fuel cell car comes in Hamburg to our charging station, we always celebrate because there will be about a month until the next one. It wasn't a mistake. I think good solutions can only be found if we work on these, if we innovate, if we work together with our partners, if we try things that others cannot even imagine, and we learn from all of these processes. Obviously, I'm not a member of the youngest generation, but currently the most interesting thing in my life is that I can be an active participant in this transition and I can learn a lot. Those who do not learn and who just think that this is the solution is likely to not be successful. And I have to add that we're still not at the end of, for example, the hydrogen fuel cell cars. Some experts still think that there is a future for it. So this egg or chicken question is a very interesting thing. So this is why we've decided to establish an electric charging station with 2.5 million stations, and we would like to establish this network at a higher speed than the spread of electric cars. Obviously, we need new capabilities for that because we are a fossil fuel company. We have to retrain our colleagues. We have to find new colleagues. You may have heard that a few years ago we acquired New Motion, which is one of the leading software developer companies, and we also purchased Greenload in the US, which plays a great role there. And these colleagues, today obviously they no longer work under these brand names, and they work with 1,000 employees, and they do their jobs in their own fields of expertise, and they provide solutions from home charging to network charging to office charging. So they provide they work on finding the appropriate solutions in every aspect. When in 2018 I told our investors about these plans, they asked me, well, this is beautiful and nice, but why do you think that you will make a living out of this activity? Because electricity at home is a very tough market. There's not much of a margin. In a lot of countries, this is very strictly regulated. And then I told them, yeah, well, this is what you told us 15 years ago when we were differentiating fuels. And this is how V-Power came to be, which is now 21% of our annual turnover. So every fifth customer pays a lot more for this commodity product or so-called commodity product. So we can differentiate if we understand the demand of our customers. So today, the 350 kilowatt-hour charging stations have an entirely different pricing than the home charging stations. So, for example, when we changed a petrol station to a charging station, we saw that it was full all the time. If we have 10 charging stations, it will be full all the time. There's a Costa Coffee and there's a supermarket, which also helps, obviously. And a very nice gentleman told me that they bought an electric vehicle because we opened this charging station. And he told us that it's because of the similar experience that he now has. A lot of people are afraid of having to spend a lot of time charging the car, or they won't be able to charge the car at the right time. So there are a lot of pinch points that we have to solve. But there are also a lot of things that are entirely new to us. So, for example, how can we integrate these activities into our grids? And we have to actively take part in this effort. We have to learn from this. So I think the challenge for us, or our task in this puzzle, is to establish an electric charging network which is entirely different to the one that exists currently, because we don't just want to have these 46,000 charging points, but for example in China, in Shenzhen, where there are more electric cars than in the UK altogether. By the way, this is also an interesting issue. We don't really know where electric vehicles are most present. And anyway, in China, we had an agreement. We signed an agreement with BYD, a company which many of you might know. This is the second largest electric vehicle manufacturer. They will manufacture 2 million electric vehicles this year, selling them in China. These are excellent quality cars, and they only manufacture electric cars. And I think they will be present in the whole world. But they don't only deal with car manufacturing, but also with batteries. And there are a lot of things that we can do together with their developers, which will provide competitive advantages to us. So it's nice to see that there's this startup company with whom, if we cooperate, we can provide a lot of new options to our customers. And I think the most important thing is that we have mosaic solutions. And I think the same goes for the activities that we are about to launch. And the goal here is to have large electric filling stations. In Shenzhen, as I've said, there are 260 charging points in one place, and they operate at a capacity of 30%, which currently is in Europe 5%. So there's a lot to learn from them. And I think a good idea is to learn from those who are already doing things better than we do, and not from those who think of themselves as all-knowers. And I think if we find these methods, if we find these solutions, the crisis will bring new opportunities. It will bring new opportunities to our companies, but also to the entirety of society. And I think this is not something that governments can do by themselves, even if there is huge commitment, which is nice, but they still won't be able to solve this by themselves.
In Hungary, for instance, we have a place like in Asia where we charge all sorts of motor vehicles like e-bikes, and we are not only talking about cars but all sorts of other kinds of vehicles. And then in our turnover, 280 billion liters of fuels, actually 40% of that is about road transport, and then it's going to be very difficult to change it over to electric charging. So this is why in America, for instance, we have these hydrogen filling stations, and we have truck companies that we've made contracts who have already decided that they want to change to hydrogen-fueled trucks, and they want to purchase them. It's very important for us and interesting, because then we can build fuel stations where we can also later on charge cars, personal vehicles, because this is again a challenge, because it hasn't yet been decided whether hydrogen is going to be the decisive fuel in road transport, or it's going to be like electric charging, that the methodology is going to be developed to the extent that we can use that as well. So this is why we work together with truck companies, truck manufacturing companies as well, so that we can see the future. And I think subject to our resources, we have to therefore think about many different ways. Now, I also want to speak about something else. When we talk about a change in sources of energy, we have to think a lot of things, because some people think that it's been already decided that for cars it's going to be electric charging. But it's very interesting that a low carbon emission biofuel world, where you can actually produce them in some parts of the world. In Brazil, for instance, there is a company called Raiz, and then I participate in their work on representing Shell. And Brazil, 57% of our turnover is ethanol. So Raizen is one of the biggest biofuel producer companies, and then clearly there we were able to finance it profitably. And interestingly enough, that there are some flex companies coming from existing manufacturers that can already be fueled 100% by using ethanol. And for instance, actually, we also have a V-Power fuel that is 100% ethanol based. And then those of you who are interested in Formula One, then Ferrari, for instance, uses ethanol 10 as its fuel this year. And then actually this is a biofuel from Brazil. And then this is because this is waste coming from agriculture. So it's not from the food industry like cane, sugar cane, but instead it's agriculture, another part of it. So it's interesting enough that we can actually operate it on a manufacturing level, and I'm proud that we are the only company who can produce such biofuel in a size that is measurable to industry consumption. And then by year 26 at the latest, we want 100% use biofuels for these Ferrari cars in racing cars. Why I'm talking about? Because when we talk with car manufacturers, then it's very important to draw their attention to the fact that it's not necessarily that there is one single solution that will be the best. The reason why I'm saying that is that maybe it's applicable to the areas where you respectively work, that you not always have to follow the mainstream. You not always have to jump into final conclusions as a company executives. This has been my experience in the past 35 years as company executives, that if you can, of course, you cannot swim against the mainstream for good, but for some time you can, unless you actually get drowned too early. But anyway, it's worth to try, because you might find some solutions that some others of your competitors will not or cannot. I've talked about many possible solutions, but also now I want to talk about the various ways we can talk and work with partners. In new areas, the biggest mistake I can see is that if you think that you are aware of the final solution, it's instead very important that we have to establish cooperation and partnerships that you can learn from. We, for instance, work together very closely with car manufacturers, and in the past 35 years I've been a company executive. I have never had such a strong relationship and cooperation with car manufacturers and various other companies working in that sector, because not even car manufacturers are aware of the final solution. There are some car manufacturers who actually establish their all-fuel charging network, like Tesla, and they are very successful. There are some others who don't think about that solution, and there are still others who think about some hybrid solutions. So we will work with all of them. So this is not a time for anybody to find exclusive cooperation and partners for cooperation. You must be flexible now, and you must be able to learn from each other. And then clearly the role played by executives is tremendous here. In our case, Shell, this is an power industry, fossil fuels. So in our case, for instance, practically we have to retrain our people while working, and then we have to learn fast and a lot. And I think that this releases such energies in everybody that is wonderful, especially if you let your people make mistakes. As a company executive, I can give you the advice that the best for you is to, especially if this is a new area, that if you have to face a lot of minor failures, then please don't think that we have found everything we wanted to, because then you probably are not going to be successful in this area. It's not easy because, of course, all of us have their shareholders and shareholders' expectations to comply with, but it's nevertheless very important that the people who work in these areas must feel empowered for innovation. And then at the very end, as they say, put your money where your mouth is. So in Hungarian, we say that actually money speaks and dogs bark. But actually what it means that it's very important for us to make investments and proper investments, because otherwise you cannot really manage such changes. In my area, actually most of the parts of innovation will be spent on electromobility, and then actually it's very important for us that money is not enough for us, but if we can actually struggle with all the problems and we are successful, then we can actually achieve a situation in electric charging, that electric mobility, where we can really find a profitable solution, and then we can achieve that customers are consciously choosing these cars in anywhere across the world, not only in New York, in Oslo, the big challenge, but anywhere else, including Hungary, and not only in Budapest, the capital city in Hungary, but in other parts of the country. So I hope that as I try to give you illustrations of my challenges, because I think that is the best thing to talk about, so that everyone can see what you are struggling with and what challenges are ahead of you. So I think these are not challenges that will make you collapse, but instead these are challenges that you can derive energy from. And I am older than most of you here, so let me then share you this idea with that this is a tremendous thing for us, and very exciting thing for us, that we can participate in that. So this is such an exciting period that I haven't yet seen over the past 35 years in this sector, but even though we had many interesting ideas. So this is a positive approach that I recommend to all of you, because this is a challenge for us. We have to be active in helping. So actually helping the executives of your future to tackle challenges of today. Thank you very much for your attention.